Welcome to the Coffee with Karen podcast, a weekly chat show discussing everything from holistic health to current affairs from a mental, physical and spiritual perspective. Get your weekly cup of positivity with a sprinkling of woo-woo.
Welcome to a Coffee with Karen, a cup of positivity with just a sprinkling of woo-woo. So every week I have guests with me and we'll discuss a variety of topics really, and they will be giving their perspective from either a mental, a physical or a spiritual perspective, or any combination of those three. Okay, so your host, my name is Karen Roberts. I suppose my focus is the mental, the physical and the spiritual within my own business. So if you want to check me out, go to KarenRobertsCoaching.com. But today we have Alison with us. So Alison, if you could just share with the listeners a little bit about who you are, what you do, and share a little bit of your story.
Okay, thanks, Karen. So yes, my name's Alison Gifford and I'm a life coach and a hypnotherapist. I'm also work as a pharmacist. I've been a pharmacist for 30 years. I've been doing the hypnotherapy and life coaching for the last 7 or 8 years. So I've sort of been doing both alongside, but now the life coaching and hypnotherapy is taking over. That's where I want to focus. That's where I see everything developing for me. So I run a company called Quietening Hypnotherapy, and I specialise in helping women who are anxious, overwhelmed, reaching that stage when they just feel like they don't know the way forward, and trying to help them find a way to live a calm, fulfilled life that feels like everything's gone back under control, like they can manage and carry on, and also see a way forward. Because I think when anxiety takes us over, we just kind of lose track of how we're going to achieve anything. It can just feel so impossible. So that's sort of my focus. But what I wanted to talk to you about today is sort of developing a spiritual practice, which is something I've only come to in the last sort of 18 months or so, although I think it's been nudging its way at me for a lot longer than that. And I just wanted to take the chance to have a chat with you about that and how it's kind of aligned with really mental health as well. I think it helps that aspect of my life, and I think it helps what I do when I'm working with people, because it gives me a different understanding of them and their issues and what I can do to help.
Right. So actually, Alison, you said that you are giving more of the mental and the spiritual, but actually you give the physical as well, because so you do cover all aspects. Because also, I mean, it's quite interesting that you've come from, you're a pharmacist. Mm-hmm. So gone from, okay, okay, maybe it's not you prescribing, the doctors are prescribing, you're delivering the product, I suppose. But what a difference between a lot of people that if they're suffering with anxiety or any kind of stress, their initial thought process could possibly be go to the doctor, get a tablet, and that'll fix the situation. And I find that fascinating and wonderful that actually, even though you come from that world, you've gone into more the well, there is actually another solution, right?
Yes, absolutely. And I've come to that because of my own journey through anxiety and trying to find a way of managing my ongoing life with it. Because I'm not sure if you've had a period of real anxiety. I think it's about managing it on an ongoing basis rather than always knowing you're going to be rid of it. You know, it's not a sort of click your fingers and it disappears. Yes. So, yeah, I went through that, and I think at the end of it, when I'd sort of found some processes that worked, I then started looking more at the number of people where I was handing out, benzodiazepines and antidepressants and all these drugs that I think can be useful for giving relief of symptoms, but don't really deal with any of the underlying issues that might be driving those, mental health issues. And so I went out to try and find something that I felt was evidence-based enough that it satisfied the kind of science background for me, but provided something that might actually help people deal with the underpinning issues that they've got that were driving them to be more anxious.
Brilliant. And love what you just said there, because it's almost like we've got to a stage where all these different labels are coming at us. You've got this, you've got that, as though it's a problem. But really, I mean, I know I suffer with anxiety at times, and I have done throughout my life. It's part of life, so isn't it? Isn't it the ebb and flow? And it's more of, I'm sure we're never going to stop it forever. There could be things that come up, and then we've got to deal with it. But when we've got the tools to deal with it, we don't have to stay in it for so long. Would that be sort of a...
And I think that's exactly it, Karen. You're right. It's about having the tools that let you step in and go, hang on a minute, this is climbing, this is spiraling for me. And I know now how to, stop that spiral. So great. Then somebody feels they're more under control. It's not as scary either, because out of control anxiety is frightening in itself. So you're right. I think we all go through the ebbs and flows. That anxiety is there. Originally, it was there to save us from getting eaten or whatever it might be. So it's been around, and it's still a safety mechanism. But there are so many more things now that cause us anxiety from different points of view, and the stress that life brings. That it's not where anxiety used to just be get anxious, deal with the problem, move away from it. Things keep coming at us all the time. So having tools that allow you to manage, as you say, when it sort of starts to peak for you again, just means that life is much more manageable.
Absolutely. And then also knowing that, you're okay. There's nothing wrong with you. We all have it in varying degrees or for varying durations, as it were. And it's not this, I don't know, it's almost like they try to put us in this little box, and you're suffering with this, as though it's this awful thing that nobody else suffers from, and you're the only one that has got this disease.
Absolutely. Well, we like labeling things, don't we? We do it with everything, that if people have got a label, somehow they fit in a nice little box, as you say. And I don't think that's the case. I think everybody, as you say, can have anxiety. And I know that what got me to the place that I got to, where I pretty much stopped functioning at one point because of anxiety, was not wanting to own up to the fact that I had it. That I could see, I look back now, I see all the warning signs were building up. But I ignored it. The people I worked with didn't know how to handle it and didn't do anything about it. My husband didn't know what to do. So that's one of the things I think I'm passionate about, is getting people to recognize it and admit to it earlier, because it's almost like, don't do what I did, because I ended up where I had to be signed off work because I just wasn't functioning. And I guess I'm passionate about preventing people going down that route, because it takes a long while then to pick yourself up and feel like you're, able to manage stuff again.
Right. And so what were some of the warning signs for people out there that are listening and might think, because, you're right. I suppose we are almost taught, maybe not taught, but there's this thing that if you've got anxiety, you're a certain way, but the build up to it is ignored. And so you only get any kind of help when you're really down there in the depths.
Catastrophic kind of events. Yeah.
Yeah. So what would have been the sort of warning signs?
Yeah, I think for me, it's all sorts of things. I look back and think I was really struggling to relax, both physically relax in terms of, I recognise now that I carried so much tension all the time in my body, and that I was getting more headaches than I had before. My shoulders hurt. I'd wake up from sleeping and I'd have my hands clenched. My jaw would ache because I was clenching my teeth. Fairly subtle things that you, at the time, you go, I've just had a bad night. And, you just tell yourself it's not important. But then it built, and then it was not sleeping well because I was so restless I couldn't sleep, or not wanting to get up in the morning because I was so tired. I'd got no energy to get it. It was like flipping from one to another. Feeling like I'd got to bring work home because I couldn't seem to get through the workload I'd got, but then just stressing about it, sitting in the corner all night, the computer and stuff, you know, rather than feeling I hadn't got the mental capacity to do it. Disengaging in some ways from some of the other stuff I was doing because I was so worn out with everything else, and just then becoming quite emotional. I would cry very easily at things that I hadn't got upset about before. At other times, I just wanted to withdraw from life, pull the duvet over my head and stay there. So, you know, it was very much a sort of a spiral downwards that hindsight's a great thing, isn't it? I recognize it now, whereas at that stage, all I kept saying to myself is, well, other people seem to be coping and I'm sure it will get better soon. And, you know, if I just keep going, I'll get through the other end of it. And weirdly, although the workload issue actually eased, I then realized the anxiety wasn't. I was in such a pattern of anxious thinking. And even when I was signed off work, because one morning I simply didn't have anything left to get me out of bed, I just couldn't do it. I then got anxious about everything at home, you know. So having thought it was a work-based issue and thinking that not being at work would solve it, suddenly I was worrying about the most ridiculous things. Really, in reality, they weren't worth worrying about, but that was the pattern I was in. That was the thought process, and that's what I was stuck with.
Interesting. And I think, and do you, well, I mean, I suppose this is a bit of an obvious question, but this last, and I've got to stop saying the last year because it's not, is it? For the last 18 months,
yeah,
what everybody's been going through, do you feel that there has definitely been a rise in these kind of feelings, would you say?
I think so. I think it's affected people for different reasons. I mean, obviously, the lack of social contact for some people is huge. Particularly, I think extroverts tend to suffer a lot from that because they get a lot of their energy from that interaction. And so that was so vastly reduced that's perhaps more difficult for them. I'm not saying if you're more introverted that you don't enjoy the social things, but you get your energy from internal processes, don't you, rather than external. But
you're
then
the second person I've never even heard that mentioned until literally a couple of weeks ago. My guest was talking about that fact, the introvert versus the extrovert, and I've never even entered my headspace. And now here you are saying the same thing, that yes, that's why some people are actually quite happy.
Yeah. Because absolutely, and I can see it. So I think one of the things I realized with my anxieties is that I tend towards the introvert. So I love being with people, but I need time on my own to recharge. That's how I fill my battery up, and I don't think I understood it at the time. So when everyone wanted me to keep doing things, that's what I kept doing, whereas actually I needed a day to just go, no, just need to be on my own. My husband, so I've quite enjoyed some aspects of lockdown. I probably shouldn't say that, but it's been quite good for me. My husband, who's a complete extrovert, has found it really difficult to not have those opportunities to be socially involved, because that's how his batteries recharge. And I think I've seen a real difference between how it's affected the two of us in some ways. I'm not saying it hasn't got to me. It has, because life's just so different, isn't it? And then, when I look at clients that I'm working with who have found they're not seeing their family so difficult, but then obviously where people are anxious, the health anxiety has really kicked in. And I think certainly at the start there was a lot of scaremongering about the risks and how we were going to manage it, and some was scaremongering and some was true. I think we just didn't know really what the outcomes were going to be. So there was lots of fear, and I think a lot of people have struggled with that. And now, of course, you've got people who've got very used to not going out, and those who've always found socializing more difficult are now struggling with having to get back into it, having not done it for 18 months. That social anxiety is actually quite an issue for some people now.
I can totally see that, and especially I see it with like even children, or I've thought about like even say autistic children. They've got used to that pattern, and now they're at home. You just think, oh, they're going to struggle so much, or the anxiety is going to be so much more than I think people realise. when everything does open back up, because they haven't had to. Interesting, isn't it?
And some
people this ever.
No, and some people, and I mean, you're right, particularly those who've got sort of autistic tendencies, particularly strongly, tend to need routine, and they've had their routine upended, and now we're asking them to upend it again and go back to a different routine, and that's hard. I mean, that's really difficult for the people supporting them and the individuals, because it's such a complete change that it's challenging to their mental health to cope with this change, because that isn't an easy process for them.
Wow. So everybody really, whether you're introvert, extrovert, whatever, everybody's really being tested at this time.
One way or another. Yeah, I would agree.
Yeah, in total different, but it is going to affect everybody, right? So share a little bit about how did you really how did you find that, I don't know, hypnotherapy was going to work for you for solving it?
It wasn't kind of hypnotherapy that I actually used for myself. I didn't really find it until afterwards. But for me, I think what helped me was meditation. And I had a friend who dragged me along. There's a local Buddhist centre near us that runs meditation, or was, it doesn't at the minute, but runs weekly meditation classes. And she said to me, I think this will help you, and dragged me along. And I enjoyed it. But at the time I was a bit like, I don't know that this is for me. It all feels a bit strange to just sit here. And of course, when you're anxious, you tend to be quite on edge and all. So asking myself to just sit there for, half an hour, 45 minutes, still quiet, eyes closed, was a real stretch. But over a few weeks, I just found it was a bit like a mental clear out. I walked away from it feeling like I just got a bit of empty space at last in my head. And that was fantastic. And actually, that's what I've maintained ever since, is a meditation practice. I have occasions when I let it slip, and then a month or so later, I'll be thinking, yeah, I know the anxiety is going up already now. So for me, it's a daily practice. And then really the hypnotherapy came about when I was back working and thinking, there's all these people taking all these medications, and we're not offering them anything else. And, meditation doesn't suit everybody. So what is there that doesn't interfere with medication, that doesn't really have negative effects, but can produce really positive responses? And being a pharmacist and medicine related, I wanted something with some evidence. And actually, there's some really good evidence for hypnotherapy. And it's recommended for things like anxiety by NICE. So it's got that kind of backing as well.
Right. Well, I mean, it sounds like, from me looking in, I'm not a hypnotherapist, but yeah, right, I'm into meditation. It feels like meditation is sort of step one. And then hypnotherapy is about just taking you a little bit deeper, maybe, or even, I don't like using the word because it sounds bad, but it's like a cheat. No, it's not. What I mean, it's just trying to go for that quick fix. Learning to meditate can take a long time, whereas at least hypnotherapy, what you can achieve for somebody, you could shave off years of trying to meditate. You go in the back room.
Yeah, I think hypnotherapy is useful because you can use that in that very sort of more acute phase of anxiety. I see now meditation for most people being more as part of an ongoing management of some sort. And I think something that's meditative or mindful, it can be out walking regularly, it can be, just spending time in the garden. It hasn't got to be sitting, eyes closed, quiet music. There are different ways of being meditative and mindful. So I think that's more an ongoing management practice I recognise now. Hypnotherapy is about deep relaxation that enables us then to work with the subconscious. And I show my age when I liken it, when I'm talking to clients, and say it's a bit like having a vinyl record and you've got the grooves and your thinking has been stuck in one groove and it's become deeper and deeper and deeper, and that needle can't jump out. what hypnotherapy does is it kind of fills that groove in and it knocks you into a more healthy thinking groove, a new one that's a good place to be. So it deals with the old patterns and it helps you set up new ones. And that changes the way you're thinking, because it's negative thinking patterns that dominate in anxiety.
Oh, absolutely. And do you think that finally, you know, people are coming to terms? I do feel that there is a more of a link, or people are now accepting the link between the mental and the physical. So they know that this is really how they think and feel is having a huge impact on their body. It's got to manifest through them somehow. So the woo-woo side then.
When did it move on? Yeah.
What made you decide that you needed to explore more of the spirituality side of things?
So I think there'd been lots go on at various times in my life. I can remember telling my parents when I was a child that I used to see people in my room and being told I just imagined it. And then it happened again at university, and then it happened again, you know, and I would wake and see people stand by my bedside. It's never frightened me. I've just been a bit like, I don't know what I'm supposed to do. Hi. Occasionally people feeling like things have sat on my bed. So odd stuff has happened on and off. And then I think as a result of the meditation and so on, I became more and more aware of things like chakra balancing and energy flow and recognizing that. And then I think I know exactly what brought it to a head was 18 months ago, Christmas Eve. I woke up and saw standing next to the bed somebody wearing almost like, you know, the big plague masks, the long white masks that they used to wear.
Oh, yes.
Terrified the life out of me. Really, really scared me. And then the next day, Christmas Day in the afternoon, I got norovirus. So I was really sick because it comes on very quickly. And I can remember sitting there or being on the bed and feeling so unwell, and I've got a temperature and just saying, I haven't got any energy to protect myself from this horrible thing I saw yesterday evening. I need someone to help me. And it sounds, even I now still struggle to sort of imagine that. Then I just saw a huge man stand next to the bed. He lifted a sword, he put it in front of himself, and I just knew I was being protected.
Wow.
And I kind of ignored that afterwards. I mean, it was fantastic because I literally felt like I was protected from everything. So I went to sleep, and it was only 2 or 3 months later talking to someone else, and I happened to mention it, and they said, well, you do realise that's about calling Archangel Michael, don't you? And I was like, pardon? Not a clue.
Oh.
Not a clue. But
Fantastic.
so I was like, okay, I really need to understand more about this, because I've somehow done something I didn't understand. I didn't know what I'd done. I just knew that I felt I needed help. And that's kind of sparked me to start reading and investigating a bit more.
Wow. That is fascinating. I do, my youngest daughter was always a little bit like that, and definitely would see certain things when she's young. She doesn't anymore, which I think is a bit of a shame, but you never know.
It might come back. Believe me, for me, it's been on and on. And the other issue is, I think, I would say to you, support her. If she says she's seeing things, try
I do. Absolutely.
Yeah, because I think the biggest issue I had was everybody going, no, you're imagining it. So you just shut it down. You just don't take it any further, because you must be being stupid. And it's probably the biggest fight I've had with myself in the last 18 months has been what I would call science brain versus spiritual side, because the two don't always comfortably sit side by side. And every time something's happened, and I now sort of, I do talk to spirit when I meditate and so on, and I get a lot of visual images. Every time I was like, no, shut it down, ridiculous. And I think it's what I've done for years. And so I've spent a lot of time now going, no, actually, you're going to be open to this, and you're going to relax into it, and you're just going to see what happens.
Good. I do think that we've all been brought up a little bit like that, being told this is, we've got to, no, this doesn't happen. So no, think like this. And there is definitely a change. And actually last week's guest was talking about this, that we are moving into, we've gone from the mind, we've had all the self-development stuff and all the talk about the mind. And we're moving more into the spiritual. I find it absolutely fascinating. I love it. Which is why this is all about this. You've got to sprinkle a little bit of woo-woo just to maybe open it up for people, just to maybe have a look. So
I think it's really hard to know where to look, because some of the stuff if you're just starting seems so out there that it can be hard to get to grips with, and people seem to either know so much or they don't know anything, and you can feel really trapped when you start investigating this to know where to find things. But I think even if people at the moment just don't kind of go, we don't want to know, things can happen that change your mind. Be open to it and try not to be closed off, is what I would say to everybody. There is more than we understand. We use such a small part of our actual physical brain that I think there just has to be more that we can do with what's left. A big part that we don't use.
And science knows that. Science, we know that. We know that we only have, this is why, even thinking about, a dog will hear things that are out of our range. So just because we can't hear it, does it mean it doesn't exist? No, it does exist. We can't hear it. So there is so much more out there than what we are perceiving from our physical senses. And I do think that people are just and it's we don't know what's right or wrong. We don't know what's true or false. And just like you say, just with an open heart and go with what resonates with you. Really, that's all we can do, isn't it?
I think that's absolutely it. I'm quite fascinated. I grew up and was brought up going to church, Christian church. But I do find it interesting that people are actually quite open generally about people having religious beliefs, but often a lot more closed down about the idea that you might have spiritual in its wider sense beliefs. And I'm like, why? Because they're both beliefs. There isn't hard proof. Why is one so much more acceptable or one part than the other? But it is, isn't it? Or it has been. And I would love to think that the shift continues.
Oh, and I hope so too. And you're absolutely right. Why is that? That is so interesting. That it is. But it's man's interpretation, and they've taken control of a certain thought process or whatever religion, and this is the way it's taught, rather than it being more the individual just going with
how it feels for them.
So I do hope we go. So how have you gone about doing this with the more spiritual side of things?
So I read a few books. I tend to read whatever I can. I'm one of those that just can't not read and look on the internet and stuff. And just decided that my best way was to try and see what I could develop through meditation. So I was only meditating, and it's only recently I'm meditating for longer. It only used to be 10 to 15 minutes a day. I'm not talking about sitting there for very long. But I just decided to be a little bit more open to what I could experience through the meditation, and gradually found that I've started to see colours and then different things, different sort of experiences, feelings. So I get a lot of feelings of different energy flow and stuff. I know everybody experiences things differently. And so then actually I met somebody via one of these bizarre meetings online, different group for something completely different. And she's helped me because she's much more sort of established and much more knowledgeable in this area. So she has sort of suggested things that I could do, made sure that I'm also doing things that keep me safe, like grounding, like using some sort of protective shield when you're doing some of this work to ensure that you are keeping yourself safe from the negative influences that are also out there. So
as I reach
I've needed that help. There we go.
just got me saved there.
Yeah, and it's all those sort of practices about, you know, cleaning the space and your own energy, and so yeah, I think it's been interesting that my biggest struggle has been, and I'm still not very good at being very open with people I've worked with as pharmacists and within the health profession. They're the people I'm finding it hardest to be open with about this, because sadly the science training tends to close a lot of people off to anything else. But in speaking to other people, I'm realizing how many more actually have that little sprinkling of woo-woo that you're talking about, you know, that it's there and they're interested. Some don't know how to develop it. They don't know what to do with it. And, you know, so I've also started using tarot cards and just doing a daily card pull for myself, and then just sitting and resting with my hand and seeing what comes to me in terms of understanding. So just small things at the moment, but it's getting to the stage where I get some quite big pictures in my head that I can see.
Love it. And it's what I find fascinating, it doesn't matter who I speak to, actually it does all come down to quietening the mind.
Yeah.
Allowing things to come to you, rather than we are so focused on doing, and we need to control, and we need to draw it out. Well, no, actually the opposite. It's so fascinating. Like, you know, this isn't my area, but I know nothing. I'm a student, I would say.
Yeah, so, I would say I'm still a student, definitely.
I'm a total student. I love it. But what I find so fascinating about it all, so my area comes from more the physical side of things, from the healing. Yeah. But even after over a quarter of a century of being in that industry, the most powerful healing that I can see so far is in fasting. So in consuming nothing and allowing the body to heal itself. And it's so interesting that even the mental side of it, the moment we try input, is trying to say that you're pushing it, but allowing your mind to clear. So again, emptying your mind is the answer's going to come to you.
Yeah,
it's mentally, and then from the physical side, even that it's just I find the two links really quite fascinating. The meditation, clearing the mind, and just allowing the answers to come to you, and combine that with fast. But it's not very good, because there's no money to be made, Alison. What's going on?
I know. And it's interesting you talk about fasting, because I, for the last year, have been doing the 16/8 fasting and finding it, it works for me really well. So weirdly, I'm doing that with my body at the same time as I do my, But I think it's hard. We want things to happen now, and it doesn't work like that with the whole spirit. It's about being empty. And some days I get absolutely nothing, and other days I feel like my stuff just comes in at speed, and just accepting whatever it is. And the biggest thing I found was that when I did get that mental space in the meditation, when I first started, as soon as I started to think I'd got a picture or a thought or something that didn't quite feel like I was in control of it, I would shut it down again. I'd tense up. And then I'd have to go, no, let it go again. Let it come. And it's learning to still stay open when something makes you go, oh, don't think that's me.
There you go again. It's that we want to, I realise, I never thought I was, but I realise I'm a control freak. I obviously want to be in control. And actually, when we allow ourselves to trust, to actually let go, I mean, how many times, all these things, I've been told before, but never really had the real understanding of it. Like that, you've got to learn to let go and let God, or, you've got to... Yeah. There is that's it. There is so much truth in that.
Yes.
Simple little line, just let go. But we instantly want to.
We want to control. I think it's weird. One of the things I've realized with the hypnotherapy is that we get a false illusion of control. We think our rational conscious mind controls far more than it actually does. Our subconscious runs a whole load of like pre-programmed responses that we don't even realize we're using. Yeah, but some of them do relate to when you're 4 and something happened and you learnt this behaviour and you're still using the 4-year-old behaviour at 34, 44, because that is your and that's where hypnotherapy helps, because it can rationalise it, it can move it into the consciousness, it can also work with the subconscious and say, at 44, acting as though you're a 4-year-old isn't actually helpful. It was great then, but it's not working for you now. But we are under this illusion that we control so much more than we do. And I think one of the words I've found the hardest that's used a lot in the spiritual space is surrender. It's not a comfortable word, or I didn't find it comfortable at all, because it's about giving up control, isn't it? And none of us want to give up control. And so I think it helped in talking to other people for them to say, well, just think about it as being, allowing things to happen. It's not surrendering control. It's not giving it up completely. It's allowing space for others. And so you were talking about allow, and that's what I've managed to come to a more comfortable acceptance of than surrender, which still has those negative connotations that I think us control freaks, humans, give to it.
But don't you find it fascinating? And especially, and again, it does make me wonder, these last 18 months, it has pushed people into thinking in a different way, because then another aspect of all of this is realizing that just because we thought we were in control, we've never been in control. That is in itself is a false, is a perception that isn't true. Yeah. We don't have any control. So why are we so bothered about giving up control? It's quite a conundrum, isn't it? That
it is.
Maybe we're learning. Maybe it's a good thing that we're learning too, because we don't want to surrender our control to bad.
No. It's learning to roll with the punches a bit. It's learning to not feel that you've got to be able to see what's coming next week. That actually, what I guess if we've learned anything, I think if I've learned anything, it's definitely about living in the moment, enjoying what I can do now, and not worrying whether I'm going to be able to do X in a month or 6 months. Because actually, if I can get out in the sunshine in the garden now, why am I not enjoying that? Why am I hung up on whether I can do whatever else it is? It's made me certainly more aware of enjoying now, but I think it has made us all realise that we don't control as much as we thought we did, and perhaps we needed to learn the lesson. Yeah. As a collective, I think that's something that we needed.
If we can trust it, I suppose the fear comes in is because we're controlled by people that might not have our best interest at heart. But when it's within ourselves, I suppose the message is, yes, trust yourself. Out of anybody on the planet,
and trust that little bit of voice, or that bit of you that it doesn't matter what name you give it, soul, spirit, inner guide. I mean, it just doesn't matter. Trust that bit of you that gives you the gut response or whatever you want, that's always working in your best interest. It always knows what's best for you. It's just we override it so often and don't listen to it, and want to think that we can make the decisions with the conscious brain, when really there's that kind of inner bit that's much more aware of what's best for us.
And it's probably my conscious bit that's mucking things up. Surrender.
Yeah, exactly. Surrender. Let things happen. And I think that's what I've found is that, I'm now running my own business and not working only a day a week now as a pharmacist, and I'm learning that things go better when I allow it to happen, when I try and get into flow, where it's not all about me pushing. And actually, when I push, my business almost goes backwards a little bit. And when I sit back and go, it's going to happen because I'm in the right place and I'm doing the right thing, you know, and the people will come that need my help, then it happens. But sitting comfortably with that, it's still a daily practice to actually, you know, allow rather than push, because we're all about setting targets, doing this, doing that, when it's more about thinking about the long term, setting out what you'd like, and then allowing it to happen, not making it happen on your timetable.
There you go. And isn't it fascinating that, you know, it does make you think maybe this is where the word faith comes from, but it's been misused.
Yeah,
so
I think faith has
yourself.
a bigger understanding, doesn't it, than we've used it very specifically in a very the formalized religious way, when actually faith and belief, I think they're both a much bigger term than we, you know, believe that things are, that things will happen for you if you listen to that inner voice and allow it to guide you. Or if you believe in the more spiritual, allow the external, you know, your higher self, your spirit guides, whatever your thoughts are around that, allow them to guide you, because they have your best interests at heart.
There you go. They have your best interests at heart, and that's where we need to put our trust. Rather fascinating. So how has exploring the spiritual side benefited, well, you both spiritually and mentally?
I think for me, it probably sounds really trite, but it's almost like I've always felt there was this bit of me that wasn't quite there, was a bit empty, wasn't engaged in the way it should be. It's like feeling a bit more complete. I always remember someone who was quite spiritual quite a few years ago saying to me, Alison, you're at risk of always remaining like a young oak tree and not the big full oak tree that you should be. If you don't explore this side of you, you'll never grow the way you ought to. And I guess I'm 51. It's a bit late maybe, but I've actually reached the stage where it's like I feel like I've got that completeness. It feels like everything's in its right place. Does that make sense, Karen? It's
totally all in the right time.
It happens when you're ready. Yeah, exactly. I like that one. I can go with that. I'm not sure my 19-year-old daughter would agree with you, but I like that one.
Oh dear. No, I mean, I have to say, I feel the same. And maybe that's all in the right time. It wasn't the right time before for me, I feel.
I think that's true. I needed the experience that I have now to kind of make it work the way it's working.
Right. And I think what a lovely combination of things that you do. And also for maybe some people that are still not maybe the ones that are sitting on the fence with the whole spirituality thing, even knowing that your background is a very scientific background can be, do you know what I mean? There's that level of trust. That maybe more than some others, people, we know if she believes.
Maybe. And it's not something I overtly share with clients unless they're interested, because hypnotherapy is not spiritual per se. It's about, mind and body working in. But I think the way that I work, if a client is open to it, brings more of the spiritual in. And I do encourage clients to think about meditation, and where they're open to it, think about, doing things that balance the chakras and keep the energy flowing. But that's only if the client wants to. It's something I share where there is an interest and where they want to. But I think people do come and they're happy. They don't have to explain all their meds to me, because I kind of know what medication they're on, and they feel that I've got that help. And for some, that works really well. It might put other people off. I don't know. But, that's the other thing. You get the clients who are the right clients for you, and hopefully you're the right person for them. So, I just believe that people come to see me because the combination of whatever I've got is what is going to work for them.
Yeah, perfect. And that's what I think, and I do think that's where we're moving into now, rather than a place of competition, that we're moving into a place of collaboration where people are realizing this, that, it's all about building your tribe, some people, and this whole thing of, I would have, couldn't have stood it before, thinking that, they don't like me. Now it's like, some will, some won't, and hey ho, it's all good. You attract who you attract, and that's the end of it. And once we get over that ego mind, I think.
That real ego.
Isn't it? And you said it earlier about going with, and that's where it is. The ego isn't involved in that, is it?
No. And I can remember describing to somebody at one stage, certainly sort of earlier on, when I was sort of investigating the spiritual, and saying I felt like my science mind was like a sulky child sitting in the corner going, but you're not listening when I tell you that it's not right. Now I feel I've got them more to balance, but it did feel like it was off in the corner having a real strop, that I was doing stuff that wasn't scientifically proven, and that now I feel I've got a balance. But I agree with you. I think we're at a stage when we're realizing that people will go to the right people for them. We'll find the people who need us, and they find the people, to help them. And actually, we don't all like everybody else. So why do we think every client's going to immediately click with us? It doesn't make sense. And I think in therapy or any kind of relationship like that, it needs to be someone that you are happy sharing with. If you're slightly uncomfortable, it's just not the right place to be.
It's not going to work, is it? No. And I can totally relate to the like when I went down my route and studying sort of fasting, and I was studying keto, and I was thinking, hang on, I've 25 years, it's a quarter of a century, I've been telling my clients one way because that's how I was taught.
Yeah.
And I felt like a bit of hang on a minute, can I have my money back? Like all that training I did, and no, that was wrong. And it is about, I'm glad I did it, because then I still have other things to bring in from that arena. But also, it's another lesson to, never stop learning.
Yeah, absolutely.
We're never going to know it all. There's always something new. Always, and especially when we go into the spiritual side of it, it's just infinite, right?
Another whole world. And there's always, that's the other thing I think, it's really important with the spiritual to not try and compare yourself to someone else, because it appears people's spiritual gifts and abilities and what they connect with are so different that it's pointless looking at someone else and going, I wish I could do what you do, because just value what you've got yourself. It's about being more comfortable, I think, with yourself as a person. And then I guess allowing flow, waiting for the clients to come, that all gets a little bit easier when you feel more comfortable about yourself.
Yeah, there you go. So for you, how does spirituality influence your approach then? So you're a life coach, which most people, would have a perception of what a life coach does. So for you, how does spirituality influence your approach to the coaching?
I think for life coaching, for me, I'm trying to do exactly what you were sort of saying earlier, which is get people to think mind, body, soul, mind, body, spirit, however you want to put it, that actually, just because intellectually it makes sense, if it doesn't feel right, if it doesn't light you up, whatever term you want to use, it's probably not the right thing for you to be doing. So I want people to get that balance between the parts of themselves, get themselves working all in alignment, really. Whereas I think it can be a very uncomfortable life to be trying to do something just because it it intellectually seems like the best decision, whether that's based on money or I don't know, there's all sorts of reasons to make a decision. So part of it, when I'm working with someone on more of the life coaching, and I bring the hypnotherapy in anyway because it's such a useful tool for getting through blocks and things, but is to get people thinking bigger picture and then work out how to achieve it. Because we tend to limit ourselves, and our intellectual brain certainly immediately looks for the problems, when actually let's go back to thinking about, what's the dream and what are the steps you could take to reach it. Who says you can't get there and live the dream life that you want? Only all the stuff you tell yourself, and a lot of that is those programs that are running that you've had for so long. I'm not saying everything is possible for everybody. That we know that's not true as well, but it doesn't mean you can't dream. And so I start by trying to get people to think a bit bigger than we tend to. So I think we narrow our focus as we get older, and it's almost go out again, broaden it.
100%. And have you noticed even then? So even with that one thing, with what's gone on in the last 18 months. Do you feel that people are thinking bigger, or actually people are they're getting smaller and smaller in general before they speak to you, I suppose?
I think it goes two ways. I think there are a lot of people for whom, the whole change in work processes, they might be able to work at home now and they couldn't before, or they've had the experience of spending more time with the children, or of realizing they don't have to travel an hour and a half each day to whatever it might be that suddenly made them go, actually life can be different. Why am I not trying to make it like this out of choice rather than just thinking I have to always do what I've always done, if you like. But then there are other people, I think, where the change has been almost overpowering because they find change so challenging. But that doesn't mean that you can't have learned from what's gone on a better way of managing change and of being more open and not resisting and controlling and trying to allow that flow. So that's what I can spend a lot of time working with, particularly clients with a lot of anxiety, is the recognition that you don't control as much as you think, and that actually that's okay. That's all right. Let it happen. You can't control the weather, and you can't control whether or not there's another pandemic, and they're just outside your control. So almost stop worrying about them, because there's nothing you can do, and that's a hard lesson, I think.
It is, but very powerful lesson as well, right? And very actually, it's the wrong word, empowering, because that sort of indicates that they're in control again, because they're not. But empowering in a way that it's okay. It's okay. It's okay.
But it empowers them to let go, doesn't it? It empowers them to release the need for control. So empowering, I think, is a good word. It's just not empowering holding on. It's empowering releasing. Yeah,
it's okay. So that really is, I suppose, if you were to sum up today's conversation, three top things to advise to people.
Three top things, I guess, if we were talking about anxiety, it's recognize there are ways of managing it. But letting go and allowing flow or space or whatever you want to call it, that's important. In fact, I think it's probably the most important. And the other thing, I think, is being open to other people's ideas. Don't close yourself off to either yourself and your own development, or to what other people might believe. Why not explore it? Find out what's in it. See if there's anything that does resonate with you. That's probably my three things, Karen.
Perfect. And that's exactly, this was the whole point, I suppose, of this show, because we are so conditioned to, it's all about the physical thing, whether it's the body, whether your work that you do, career, it's the nuts and bolts of what our perception is. And then recently, because of the introduction, and people are talking more about mental health, and we have been going down the mind body link for so long, that's come in, and it's just to try to introduce that, oh, there might be something else.
There's another bit to add on, exactly. Mind, body, and that over there.
And it could be anything. I mean, you know, like you say, there's so many. I mean, where do you start? I mean, there's so much out there.
Yeah,
and
work you.
Yeah, there's no right or wrong, and it's whatever you resonate with. So, yeah, fantastic. Thank you so much, Alison.
So
yes, I didn't know that it was actually even going to go down that road, so I'm being very pleasantly surprised. So for the listeners out there then, Alison, if they wanted to get in contact with you, what is your website?
It's galenhypnotherapy.co.uk. So that's GALENE, hypnotherapy. Galen is the Greek god of calm seas. That's why I've used that name, because I'm all about calm.
Awesome. And if you're watching the video, all the links will be down below anyway. But if you're just listening, then how else can they get in touch with you, Alison?
I'm on Facebook and LinkedIn as either Alison Gifford or Galen Hypnotherapy. On both, I've got pages, and I'm also on Instagram as Galen Hypnotherapy. So you can track me down in those places, and I've got some courses coming out in September to help with anxiety. So if people are interested, there'll be more information about those soon.
Brilliant. And you say about anxiety, so my daughter will probably start laughing as I tell this story. So I would say, on the face of it, I don't really suffer with anxiety, except when it's the middle of the night and I jump up out of my bed, literally, and when we're talking sleepwalking here, I've jumped out of my bed, I'm into my daughter's bedroom going, but, and I've got this thing in my head. They laugh at me, my girls laugh at me now, they go, Mum, no, it's all right, Mum, you're just having one of those. Ever since, so my youngest daughter is now 17, so we're going back a while.
Yeah.
So I've had it ever since. I'm not blaming her, I'm just saying I've had it since that time. And I have this thing where I've forgotten to take. So what you would prescribe, something from the chemist. I was supposed to take those tablets 3 times a day, and I haven't done it for 3 days. So it's too late. That's it, I've been. Now, it seems so real, and sometimes I can hold it because I'm trying to remember what it was that's so important that I haven't done. So,
it's already gone.
And then I realised that it's just a dream. But so, Alison, your expert opinion, that is some kind of subconscious anxiety going on there, isn't there?
Yeah, it kind of implies that your brain's got some stuff it's dealing with when you're asleep. There are different things you can do that might help. A notepad and a pen, or a voice app that you can use as you go to bed and dump everything in it that's on your mind, so that you can then say, that's all there for me to pick up tomorrow. I don't have to deal with it now. That's a really good way. And then the other thing is to also do the same. If you wake in the middle of the night, write down whatever you're thinking about. And then again, it's easier to release it and not feel that you've got to keep playing with it in your head.
So too much going on.
Yeah, you're right. It just means there's lots processing in there overnight.
Too much going on, but it's a bit of a sort of home joke. I'm the home joke at the moment. My children just laugh at me and go, Mum, no, you're all right. I go, no, but really, and I'm really trying to hold on to the memory of this fake. Oh well,
what it was. Yeah, I dream about losing things a lot when I'm anxious. So I've lost something and I don't know where I've left it. And same thing. The brain's just trying to kind of tell you. So I do lots of things. I realise loading all my anxieties into a hot air balloon basket and letting them go when I go to bed, so that they float off and I don't have them left in my head anymore. That can be helpful. Any of those steps.
Brilliant. Well, there you go. So hopefully lots of tips for the listeners, and I'm taking that on board as well myself. So Thank you for being here, Alison. What a fascinating conversation, actually. And to the listeners, I will see you, or you will hear me again next week on A Coffee with Karen. Thank you for now. Bye.
Welcome to the Coffee with Karen podcast, a weekly chat show discussing everything from holistic health to current affairs from a mental, physical and spiritual perspective. Get your weekly cup of positivity with a sprinkling of woo-woo.